Hi, my name is Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. I wanted to talk about how I experience reading in a couple of different areas. So the first area is to do with visual images. So to what extent I create visual images in my mind as I'm reading a book. And the second thing I wanted to look at is subvocalization. So whereby in your mind as you're reading you sort of hear the words in your mind as you're reading them. So I've been thinking about doing a video on these topics for a little while actually, but what's prompted me to do it now is Katie from Books and Things, whose channel I'll link down below. She mentioned something to do with one of these aspects in a video that she did, and then we've had a little chat in the comments. I think in some of the areas Katie and I are kind of similar, but only to a certain extent. In other areas we're not that similar. And Katie put up a couple of surveys on her community tab, sort of asking people for their experiences and how they experience both sort of visual imagery and also subvocalization when they read. So I thought that I would do a little video talking about how I experience reading, but also I'm doing this because I'm quite nosy in the hope that you will share with me how you experience reading. This is something that I do find endlessly fascinating, and there are certain things that we'll see as I get to them that I just had no idea other people experience reading in such a different way to the way that I do, because I guess it's like you only know what you know. I experience reading the way I do, and it kind of blows my mind the sort of vast differences in how other people experience reading. So the first aspect I wanted to talk about is in terms of like visual images while you're reading. So when I read, I don't picture anything in my mind. I read the words, follow the story, but I don't conjure up images of what's happening, of the places, of the characters. You know, like how some people, when a movie is adapted from a book, they say, oh, that actor doesn't look anything like how I pictured that character to look. That never happens to me, because I honestly don't picture characters as anything. I just don't picture stuff when I'm reading. I do have like a visual, I can conjure up images in my mind. Like if you ask me to picture an apple, I can picture an apple. If you described to me, I don't know, say a garden, and you described like where the trees are and what colour the flowers are and where the bench is, and if you describe that to me and ask me to conjure up an image in my mind, I can do that. So I do have the ability to do that, but it's just not something that comes naturally to me when I'm reading. And I've been thinking it's probably why I don't like overly descriptive books. And certainly as a child, and I think as a teenager, I used to almost skim over descriptive passages to get to like the next bit of dialogue, because those descriptive passages don't really do anything for me. I'm not using them to build an image, and I think as long as I get a vague understanding of what's being described, so for example, like, I don't know, a pretty garden or a rundown house or a shopping centre or whatever it might be, as long as I've got a vague idea of what the author's trying to get at, that's fine. I don't need to know all the details, because I'm not using those details to create a picture in my mind. Now, if I stopped and tried to do that, I could do that, but I just never naturally do that when I'm reading. And then the other thing I was thinking is I don't have much imagination at all. So in English classes in school, my worst nightmare was that when the teacher would say, write a story. Because I just have no imagination. And I wonder how much that plays into it as well, because I guess when people visualise stuff when they're reading, and I don't know, you have to tell me if you do this, I guess part of it might be literally picturing what is actually overtly being described to you. But I wonder how much of it then is filling in the gaps. So the author might not necessarily be describing the ins and outs of the location or exactly where people are or what every single character looks like in great detail. But I guess some readers, maybe, do they imagine that themselves, filling in the gaps of what the author is not sort of overtly telling them? And maybe that links into as well why I don't conjure up visual images when I'm reading, because I just don't really sort of, my mind doesn't work that way, and I don't sort of have the imagination to do so. One thing I wondered, and I think Katie and I are similar in this respect, is that I think we don't really visualise stuff as we read, and we both read quite fast. And I know this is one of the polls that Katie put up, and I'm hoping Katie's going to do a video about this, so, check that out when it comes. But yeah, so how much, whether you visualise, links into how fast you read. If you are, and I guess it depends, and I don't know how much effort is going into you creating these pictures, because if it's something that is just happening effortlessly as you're reading, maybe it doesn't affect your reading speed. But maybe if you are pausing to try and really create that picture in your mind, maybe it does affect your reading speed and slow you down a bit. Not that that matters, not that reading speed is significant, but I just think this is all really interesting and just fascinating. So the one exception where I do make an effort to visualise something as I'm reading, this is a very specific example, but it applies to quite a lot of the books I read. I do like a murder mystery book, and in particular I like a locked room mystery. So if the author is describing to me a locked room where someone has been murdered, and they are describing, the dead body is slumped forward across the desk, the window to this side is locked, the door here, there's a cabinet here, whatever, I will try to picture that, because clearly in that respect it's quite significant, it's going to be important, there's going to be clues there to solve how the murder was done. So in that case, yeah, I do specifically try to picture it, although helpfully in a lot of those books they include a little floor plan. I love a floor plan, that I don't have to try to imagine anything. But that's my really one exception. Other than that, I don't visualize stuff, and I believed for some people it's like a movie in their mind as they're reading a book, and that just seems wild to me. I can't imagine how that must feel. So anyway, that was the first part of what I wanted to sort of talk about. And the second was subvocalization. So when you, as you're reading, in your mind, you're reading. It's like you're reading out loud, but it's not out loud, it's in your mind. I'm explaining this really badly, but I'm sure you know what I mean. So when I read, I am in my mind reading. It's as if I'm reading out loud, but I'm not physically saying the words that I'm reading. Now, I'm pretty sure as a teenager, I didn't used to subvocalise, and I used to read an awful lot faster as a teenager. Probably because I was just skipping over all the descriptive passages, clearly. But I do think I used to read an awful lot faster as a teenager, and I think it's because I didn't used to subvocalise. And I think the reason I started doing it was when I found out other people did that. Not that everyone does, obviously, but when I found out that that's how a lot of people read, I think then I started to do it as well, and now, of course, I can't stop. Not that it matters, but it certainly slows my reading down. I know there are things you can do, I think, to sort of try and train your brain to stop subvocalising, but I'm not sure I'm that bothered about it. But one thing I thought was really, really interesting, which I only found out in the last couple of weeks from, as I say, Katie's poll surveys and stuff that she's put up. When I subvocalise, it's my voice in my head. It's always my voice, whether it's a descriptive passage, whether it's dialogue, it's my voice. But some people hear in their mind different voices. So I think for some people it's like a full cast audiobook, and people will conjure up different voices for like different characters' dialogue. And that's wild to me. It never occurred to me that was how some people experience reading. Just because I only know what I know, and I'd never heard anyone talk about that before. So that is crazy to me. So some people, as they're reading, it'll be like watching a movie, and it could be as well like having a full cast audiobook going on in your head. Not to say both people necessarily have both those things, but you could do. To me, that feels like sensory overload. I cannot imagine that. So it is just my voice that I hear as I am subvocalising a book. So I would be really interested to know how you experience reading. And it's entirely possible there are aspects of this maybe that I've not even thought of yet. And there are things that you experience that has not even come into my mind yet. But I'd be really interested to know how you experience reading. So in terms of, do you visualise things as you're reading? Do you have to make an effort to do that, or does it come naturally to you? And also in terms of subvocalization, do you subvocalize or don't you? Is it something you've never done? And if you do subvocalize, do you hear different voices for different characters? How does that work? I'd be really, really interested to hear your thoughts. I think this is endlessly fascinating. So yeah, let me know. Thank you for watching. I hope you're doing well, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.